Being 7 o'clock, I call the Lisle Library District Board meeting for October 9th, 2019 to order. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Tom Stuffy.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Karen Larson.
Here.
Jenny Norton.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
Emily Swistek.
Here.
All right, all here. Next item on the agenda is opportunities for visitors to speak. Does anybody wish to speak in public comment?
Hello, my name is Chris Schulthoff, and I'm going to start out with the nice stuff. I'm very impressed with the way the new members of the board have integrated into the old board. I hate to say it, but you know what I mean. And the projects that have been put on the back burner for a number of years are now finally moving forward. Frankly, if the heating and air conditioning went, I'd be scared spitless, you know. Having said that, there's been discussion, and there should be, about should this stay here at the library or should a future move be considered. I understand that. I don't like the conversation that focuses on the boarded up mall there, the strip mall on Ogden and Main Street, and I'll tell you why. Tom Duffy, I commented on your Facebook post about the same thing. I'm here an awful lot, and I'm here mostly during the day. There's a lot of children that use these facilities. Children are not known for following directions. Like, they'll run in a parking lot. You can't stop them. I can't tell you the number of times that I have tried to exit on a clearly designated exit spot. Signs, exit, arrows, you know, don't come in this way, with cars trying to turn in. I actually had one person in the middle of Front Street honking at me to move so she could come in the exit and race up the down ramp. There are children that run all over the place there. When I wouldn't move, she actually went around me and then raced up the ramp. This has happened so many times, I don't even keep track anymore. So this is just, it's a lawsuit, which is not, and it's injuries. And children being injured, I don't think there's anything worse than something like that, for something that could be easily prevented. Putting it near a main street, this is not a place where you go like, do I want pizza, or do I want curry, or maybe Chinese. It's a destination. You don't need to have a big location on a main street. They'll know where you are. If you want to replace signage, excellent idea. Make it a little bit easier to spot as you're driving by. But I don't think we need to be on a big main street with that much traffic. You've seen how people race down Ogden. The 40 mile an hour is just kind of like a starting point for some people. So that's what I have to say. Oh, and the renovations, everything with the bathroom, great. If you start talking about replacing the toilets and things like that, I'm well acquainted with all the various types they have out there because I've been going to COD now for about 1.5 years. And stay away from the auto flushes. That's all I have to say without getting any more. Stay away.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to speak in public comment?
President Hummel, thanks for the opportunity to address the board this evening. I've been following the board's facility planning discussions with great interest, both via the minutes and the YouTube recordings, and was glad to actually be here in person for the CCS presentation by Graham Harwood and Mark Rogers. I enjoyed both their presentation and the conversation it sparked, and I think they'll be good partners for the library as it makes its plans for the future. But I was also glad to hear that some trustees are raising questions and concerns about the downtown plan, if we can call it that, since I have significant concerns about it myself. Right now, the library has an enviable control of its own future. It owns its building, it owns land around it sufficient to provide flexibility for future construction or growth. CCS mentioned Lombard's Helen Plum Library at the last meeting as an example of what can happen when a library doesn't control its own facility. I'm sure that library would love to have the freedom and control that this one does. Instead, they've been battling the Lombard Park District, which controls some but not all of that library's real estate, for literally years regarding the library's plans to build a new facility. I would have thought that winning voter support for a new library via the referendum would have been the hard part in Lombard, but it turns out it's the Park District. The DuPage Children's Museum is another example of a cultural institution that, because they're sitting in somebody else's building on somebody else's land, has been under threat. Naperville has been talking for years about whether they want to redevelop that parcel, which the city owns, into something else, despite the museum having a 20-year lease. For now, Naperville has decided, no, the museum can stay, but certainly things could change again. At the last meeting, the downtown plan seemed to be essentially joining with a developer to inhabit a portion of some multi-story, multi-function building. Someone suggested it would probably have to be the second floor because, of course, retail would have to be on the main floor. Whether it's a condo-type ownership arrangement or a long-term lease, I think this sort of arrangement would seriously curtail the library's ability to adapt and change to meet patron needs in the future. And I think that giving it the control and flexibility that the library currently has would be a serious mistake, particularly for an institution which, I hope, has aspirations to be around for at least another 50 years, if not a century or more. And that's the kind of time span that an organization like this has to think about. It's not just this year, next year, it's decades. But in addition to these sorts of long-term scenarios, these sorts of long-term concerns, there would be practical day-to-day issues with patrons under this scenario as well. I don't need to tell you that the parking situation in downtown Lisle is abysmal. As the director said at the last meeting, the library has sufficient, if not ideal, parking. We may not like how it's arranged, but a patron never really has to worry about whether they'll find a spot. And in addition to that, because the library controls all of its own parking, it's been able to designate the spots by the front door as either limited mobility or 3-minute parking without needing to negotiate with anybody else or any other organization. It seems unlikely that the library would have this much flexibility to react to and serve its patrons' needs like that in a shared arrangement downtown. Despite the higher visibility of a downtown location, I'm fairly certain that library patronage would drop as a result of the sheer inconvenience of the location. Regarding renovating the building, I'm glad the possibility of expanding the building is at least being explored. As Trustee Duffy noted last time, the space study done a few years ago indicated the library is seriously undersized for the size and needs of the community it serves. And honestly, even if you didn't have that space study, you'd have to conclude it's undersized just anecdotally from the stories that patrons tell over and over again. Not enough study spaces, not enough meeting rooms, not enough bathrooms. I know some trustees are hoping we can just kind of move stuff around and satisfy some of those needs, but I'm pretty sure that that'll just cause reciprocal complaints the next time around regarding the new shortcomings of the spaces that got shortchanged in that process. I was troubled too to hear that this moving stuff around might be at the expense of staff space to do their work. As Trustee Duffy, again, noted last time, one of the takeaways from his facility tour was that staff workspaces are already cramped and insufficient. But overall, I was impressed by the board's openness to engaging with the deficits of this building and trying to make the changes needed to better serve patrons and the community. I'm looking forward to seeing how this process develops. Thank you again for this opportunity to address the board.
All righty. Anybody else wishing to speak? All righty. The next item on the agenda was assignments for reviewing monthly accounts payable. Vice President Bartelli and Trustee Larson reviewed the September billings in October. Next month, myself and Trustee Sullivan will review the October billings in November. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second. Any discussion or changes or anything on the consent agenda? All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Karen Larson.
Here.
Jenny Norton.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Emily Swistek.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda, I want to, if somebody can make a motion, I would like to move item 8A, audit presentation and accept the annual audit up so we could have the presentation. So would somebody make a motion to move item 8A?
I'll try it. I'll make a motion to move item 8A up to the next item on the agenda, which would be number 4, and scoot everything else down.
That's, yeah, the last part's, that's fine. So,
I'll second.
well,
I'll cede it to
okay, let's move this
Sullivan.
all. All right, just all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Hey,
So, Michael?
I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Sorry.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Tavai with Lock Naming. Had the privilege of working on the audit this year with Tatiana and the team. Want to start by thanking Tatiana, Jackie, the whole staff, during the process of the audit. Especially for first-year clients, you really never know what you're walking into as far as an audit goes. So having a good working relationship and having material that's provided quickly when it's requested and clean and easy to go through makes all the difference in an audit. So I just want to start by thanking the team for the efforts during the audit and for just being clean and making my job a little bit easier for me. So what we're going to do is start with the larger packet that you have. It's the 2019 annual financial report. What I'm going to do is kind of do a brief overview of the audit. We're not going to get into too much detail into any of the sections. As I'm going through, feel free to ask any questions. And after I'm done, I'll open up for questions as well. So we will just jump in. So after the table of contents, we get to the independent auditor's report. It's basically just an auditor letter, stating that the conclusion of the audit. Basically, the takeaway from this is to note that we issued an unmodified audit opinion, and in the audit world, that's just the highest level of opinion that can be issued. Following the auditor's letter, we come to the management's discussion and analysis, the MD&A. We like to say that that's essentially an executive level overview of the financials for the fiscal year. So in case you're not like me and enjoy looking through the financial reports themselves, the MD&A section is a good section of the audit to read. It puts into simple terms and basically goes over what happens in the year without putting it into just financial statements. So following the MD&A section, actually if you can go to page 13 in the audit report. So page 13 is the balance sheet, so this kind of gets our financial statements started. This, we have here the general fund, the capital project, special reserve, and then the non-major funds, which we'll get to. So this is typically the general fund, the type of amounts that you may be seeing on a monthly basis as a board, going through and approving and keeping an eye on our overall balances. So page 13 here, we have the general, special reserve, non-major. We're showing the assets, liabilities, and the total fund balances. If we skip to page 15, this is the statement of revenue and expenditures and the change in fund balance for the year. So on page 15, the third line from the bottom, we see the net change in fund balance for the year. So in the general fund, we can see we went up about $2.5 million for the year, bringing our ending fund balance to $4.7 million. The special reserve had an increase of $3.5, and just above that, we can see where those large amounts came from as well. So the general fund transferred out $300,000 to our special reserve in the year. So obviously general fund would have had quite a bit significant more increase had not for that transfer to take place. One thing I'd like to point out as well is how healthy the fund balance for the general fund, special reserve, and once we get to the major funds as well, how healthy those look. Especially coming into first-year clients, we like to see a fund balance policies in place, which the library has one in place. Typically for libraries, and I complete about 30 library audits a year, so I'd like to feel like I'm versed. If we look at the $4.7 million fund balance compared to our current expenditures in the year at 3.6 or 3.7 million, we can see we're well over 12 months of a fund balance. So as far as our fund balance policy goes and the current fund balances, these are definitely healthy fund balances, and seeing the transfers from general to the special reserve and capital projects, for future type expenditures. That's basically exactly like what we like to see, So having these balances, completing the transfers and planning for the future is definitely something, like I said, we're used to seeing, especially these days. A lot of libraries are going under renovations and trying to modernize a bit. Following the financial statements on page 17 begins the notes to the financial statements. Without getting too much into it, in the government world of accounting, certain items such as capital assets, long-term liabilities like vacation payable, things like that, are not included in the financial statements. It's just government standard of accounting. So the notes to the financial statements are basically, footnotes to the financials that don't get included in the actual formal financial statements. So for example, if we go to page 27, we can see our capital assets. And I want to point this out because when we get to the building and maintenance fund in the non-major funds, we'll see the building and maintenance fund had the only decrease in fund balance in the year. And a large part of that is due to capital improvements that we either had completed in the year, such as the elevator project, certain fire systems being put in place, to a construction process being increased for renovation that kind of started at the end of the fiscal year. So then following the notes of the financial statements, we're going to skip to the non-major funds here. Get to it. So on page 47, so these non-major governmental funds are essentially the smaller type funds that we levy for. So we see the building maintenance, IMRF, Social Security, and the working cash. So on 47 and 48, we see the assets, liabilities, fund balance. And then page 48, third line from the bottom, we see the net change in the fund balances. So as I mentioned before, the building maintenance went down, and I can see we're no longer levying for that non-major fund as well. And so the same thing goes for these funds, having healthy fund balances. We always look at the overall expenditures and our ending fund balance, how many months out do we look. IMRF is kind of the only one that looks like it's getting away from us a little bit as far as the buildup of that goes. But overall, the fund balances and how much we're maintaining in each of these non-majors are something that we're comfortable with and we think are in healthy fund balances. Okay. Especially when it comes to fund balances, if we ever think something's getting, a little higher than it should be, that's something we always like to bring up in the audit, especially for a first-year client. We get the audit done, and then, going in future audits, we kind of have a discussion about ways to maybe, mitigate certain things. Could be a discussion in the future as well. So as far as the financial report itself goes, that's kind of all I was going to cover with the main highlights. Before we jump into questions, I want to jump to the other report you'll have, the management letter comments. Management letter comments, I like to say they're basically strong suggestions. Nothing severe that we put in the audit, but basically we just like to point these out. So for the library, all we had was the outstanding check write-off policy and the capital asset appraisal. And I gotta say, for a first-year client, those are nothing comments to worry about. Typically, capital asset policies, fund balance policies are ones that we see for first-year clients. Outstanding check write-off policy, that's something we give every single client that does not have one, just because, especially in the government world now, if you start building up outstanding checks, people start to notice. There wasn't anything material or that I would consider to be worried about. Like I said, it's strictly just, if you don't have it, you get the comment. So please don't take that as we have a whole bunch of outstanding items to be worried about. The capital asset appraisal, the reason we gave that one was basically, we have a solid asset detail in place that we're able to use for the audit. It's just the last time an appraisal was done, I believe, was about 20 years ago or so.
Is it 20?
And so that's basically been being rolled forward for quite a while, but which isn't uncommon. Appraisals are very expensive, and so it's nothing that, like I said, just throwing it on here to kind of point it out as well. So as far as management layer comments go, just having those two, it's nothing to worry about, outstanding check policies. I've got a million templates and examples from other clients, so I can forward some along just for the board to take a look at. But like I said, all the other policies in place are what we would expect and hope to see for clients. So fund balance and capital asset policies being the primary ones. So at this point, questions?
Anybody with questions or comments for the auditor?
Well, so like I said, it was a pleasure working with Tatiana and the team this year. Once you do go home and have some light reading with this, if you do have questions pop up or come down the line, feel free to go through Tatiana and we can take care of that. Great thing about working for a firm that specializes in government type, auditing and work is you've got a whole slew of resources behind me to go through for questions and kind of just help you guys out where you see needed. So
Thank you.
We got a question.
yeah.
What would be your recommendation as to what an appraisal should be done every X years?
So I don't have an exact suggestion on that. So for example, I'm actually working at Plainfield Library this week. I was there earlier today, and they had an appraisal done just last year. And so I think it's kind of twofold because it's always good to know what we have and what it's worth, in the current times. But at the same time, if we know we're talking about a renovation or something large taking place in the next couple of years, maybe wait until something like that takes place and then do the appraisal. Because you don't want to pay however much for an appraisal and then it comes down the line and, we have a renovation done and then everything's, flipped upside down. As far as the audit perspectives goes, because the capital assets are just a note to the financial statement and not reported in the financials directly, that's why we can be a little more relaxed with exactly how precise everything is. If we were a private company or, like had business type funds, like a water reclamation district, we're a little more strict with them as far as current appraisals go. For the library, the fact that we just have a little comment about it and not something more formal in the audit. So long answer to a short question, but we don't have a set time frame. Some clients do it every 10 years. Some do it every 5, some do it every year just because it makes them sleep better at night. So it's kind of up to the discretion. So
Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand your comments about the IMRF.
okay.
You had just mentioned verbally that, I'm not sure I understood what you said about the amount of money that we have in IMRF. You said it was you wanted to make sure it didn't get away from us. And
So I was probably just misspoke as I was talking about the fund balances. So there's two different things probably that we may be crossing paths with IMRF. There's the IMRF fund that we levy for, we collect property taxes for, and then the library contributes to IMRF, as an expense. And then there's the IMRF overall Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. That is the library's share of that overall large retirement fund. And so what I was speaking to was strictly how much money we levy for in taxes to collect in revenue for IMRF contributions for employees for the expenses. So I think on page 47, it was, yeah, 47, 48. So this is strictly what I was speaking to, just in regards to what we collect for IMRF. Right here, miss, sorry. So strictly what we collect in property taxes compared to what we spend out, what our fund balance is, that's what I was alluding to, is a healthy, amount. I think what you're talking about in the notes to financials is the actual employee retirement system as a whole. So I think that's where we might not be on the same page with it.
so I guess my true question is, do
Okay.
we need to do anything differently than what we're doing?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And The good thing about IMRF is it's one of the best retirement funded systems in the US.
Okay.
Not talking about our neighbors, 30 miles to the east. And so IMRF, they're always changing their rate, they're always evaluating what the contribution percent should be. And so I didn't tick mark it here, but there's a place that we can
Oh,
see
no,
what
you've
our-
already answered my question.
So IMRF is very healthy. You guys are absolutely contributing,
Okay.
the amounts that we should be. We've been part of IMRF. Clients that just first join IMRF, they have a little shell shock sometimes with, how much it costs to join IMRF at the forefront. You're fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
good,
yeah, you're
good.
you're It's a lot of actuarial stuff that I'm happy I'm not a part of.
Okay. You and me both.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
All right, well, thank you guys so much. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll see you all next year then. Take care, guys.
All right, thanks.
Thank you much.
Can we get since we're on it, can we get a motion to accept the annual audit?
I'll move to accept the annual audit.
Okay.
I'll second.
Who made the second?
Karen, can I-
Karen, reach out, you want to give it?
Bless you.
Bless you.
There it is.
You can log
All
that
right,
too.
can we get a roll call, please?
Liz Sullivan,
Yes.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Hi.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. All right, next is committee reports. Finance Committee?
We met September 24th. One of the principal discussion items was the annual cash flow projection presentation by Ehlers, led by Ken Helderman, if I got that correct. Ferdinand, sorry about that, Ken. And so we went through the cash projection, and we also went over the couple of finance-focused policies, 710, 720, but we did not make a recommendation yet for action on policies because we figure the order of operations needs to be to step back and wait for the finance department with our support from Sikich to kind of settle things down and come to us with their recommendations. And but we did have a good sort of brainstorming session. We looked at a couple of clerical things in the policies. Ehlers did not have anything to add to our policies. We had scrubbed them in late 2018, so they're already pretty decent shape. And then we also had a separate brainstorming discussion on improvements, which again is somewhat tabled until we have Sikich get things a little more oriented. So that's the update there. No future meeting yet planned, again, because we have an order of operations to consider before we regroup.
Do we happen to know how long we've used them? How many years we've
Ehlers?
used? Yeah.
Over 6.
I would say about, I think they came in right around when I started, give or take a year.
6-ish.
Yeah.
Do we have any, goal to like reevaluate vendors at a certain time frame, certain number of years? I know we just did the auditor. I know at some point we did legal services. Ehlers, there's some things I'd like them to do differently. I'd like them to charge us less.
I think the two things, I agree, there definitely should always be a check-in on the service quality that we're getting with all of our vendors, but the two sort of prerequisites in my mind are, well, first of all, the people that will support us on Ehlers just turned over, so there's that to consider internally, and then also again with Sikich needing to still come up to speed, and they may have recommendations that impact that, so.
Okay.
So, I mean, that is something we probably could and maybe should look at, and like Jenny just mentioned too, that since there's a retirement with Ken, so our point person will be different, so I mean.
It's a good opportunity, and yeah,
So it might be.
we'll look at it in the nearer term once things settle.
Cool.
Any other questions, comments in regards to the finance? Okay. Personnel and policy.
Okay. I believe we all got the email from Tatiana to have your calendars ready so we can schedule a meeting. we were not able to get one on the calendar for October, it just didn't work with everyone. So possible dates and times, Friday, November 1st, either 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Monday, November 4th, 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Wednesday, November 6th, 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Or Friday, November 8th, 6 p.m. or 7 p.m.
I would probably prefer the Monday the 4th or Wednesday the 6th. I don't know about Friday at 6 or 7.
I would like the 6th if possible.
Marjorie, does the 6th work for you?
Yes.
Wednesday, November 6th?
Yeah.
Do we prefer 6 p.m. or 7 p.m.?
6.
6 or 7?
6, I would rather do it earlier.
Okay, so our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 6th at 6 o'clock p.m. Perfect.
Drinks to follow?
What? Drinks to follow? No. Go to bed.
She makes us sit there for like 2 hours. Yeah, that is right after.
All right. Physical plan.
Well, we have not met. Tatiana, I would, what's the word I'm looking for? Since CCS is involved and we're presenting everything to the board as a whole, I don't see any reason to meet as an individual committee. Would you agree?
I think so, yes.
I do.
Okay,
Not
so
being
tell
asked,
that.
but I do.
All right. Then next item is staff reports. We'll go one by one here. Any question or comments with the director's report?
I'm still putting that data.
Okay.
Can't-
You have a question? You have a question? Anything like that? Okay, good.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted a couple of things to add that are new. That it's per capita grant time, and for the newer board members, every year, the board is assigned a little homework assignment, and this year it's going to be viewing a webinar. The board did this last year. So I'll be sending something via email that way. And then I have an update regarding the My Library Rewards program that we initiated in September. Paul Hurt, the Circulation Services Director, forwarded me some statistics. And My Library Rewards is an incentive program, reading incentive program that we implemented in replacement of the month-long business partnership program that we've had for 10 or plus years, but now this is a year-long program. So the incentive program is the more books you read, the more discounts you can receive at local businesses. And it extends beyond just Lisle, but we like to encourage the local businesses to participate. So right now we've got 15 to 20 local businesses participating directly in Lisle. And outside of that, we have 130 businesses within a 15-mile radius of Lisle. And we have 402 registered users. So that means 402 people use the My Library Rewards when they checked in. They're receiving, quote, points. And that can be Lisle patrons as well as reciprocal patrons. And then September statistics show that 45 rewards were redeemed in September. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I think people are really enjoying it. We're hearing a lot of positive feedback. And then speaking of statistics, when we get to the assistant director's report, we've been noticing some statistic inconsistencies regarding our foot traffic in the building and our patron counter, and she will have more information on that when we get to that.
Is the circulation report part of your director's report?
I mean, if you have
Yeah,
questions
yeah,
about it, I can
but,
try and
yeah.
answer them.
Okay, I was wondering, there have been some up and downs in the database usage, unique logins. And I think we have something like 20 different databases. 40? Okay. And I can't remember what we spend on them every year, but I know it's a considerable amount of money. And I was wondering if we can get a report on usage for each database, maybe as a one-time report?
Sure, we've
Just-
done that, and we can do that again.
Okay, just to check in and see which databases are being used and which aren't. If everybody else would find that information
Yeah.
valuable.
I mean, it's a cost savings.
Well, yeah, I don't
You
know
know,
which ones are.
We did that, and we did it, we showed a year's worth of statistics. I think it was last January. It was at year end, so we showed the whole year of statistics. We can do that again.
There, you know, if you would prefer to wait so you can do a whole year, that's fine too. I mean,
What do you guys want to wait till January or?
and see a whole
So,
year.
Yeah,
January?
see.
Is that when we did it
It
last?
makes sense, and it's also part of our budget discussions too. That's like budget discussion season in winter.
Okay,
So wait till January to get that?
that's
info?
fine,
All right.
that's fine. That'd be great.
The only comment I have in regards to the director's report, I know the director was at the Lisle Women's Club 55th, and both Beth, that's right, Beth was there too.
56th.
56th anniversary, and I actually got invited too. So I was there, and Kathy Quitzel was giving, actually that was a really nice event overall, and Kathy Quitzel kind of gave a speech, kind of the whole, she should almost share that almost with us, or like maybe do a presentation someday, like the whole formation of the Lisle Library. And the one other interesting stat she had is, you know, the women's club, not just the Lisle Women's Club, but women's club across the country have started 75% of the libraries in the country, which I thought was a pretty unique stat, so. So, and Trustee Sullivan was there, but you remember the women's club,
Right,
though, that's
right.
right, I forgot, so there was.
You know what, I would really think that we should invite Kathy to give that presentation.
That presentation.
I thought it was
Yeah,
fascinating,
it
there's
wasn't
so
that-
much.
It's not that long, I'll talk to her.
Right, I mean, you know, when you hear about how the Women's Club started this library and everything that's happened over the years, I didn't know that, and
Yeah.
I'm a member.
Yeah, I knew that obviously the women's club started it, but
Yeah.
it was interesting, the whole history, like with the referendum and stuff, so.
I don't think now's the time, because we got so much
Oh, yeah,
going
yeah, I mean,
on.
when we have like a lighter agenda, that might be the time.
Yeah.
We touched upon that at Barbara Roke's Memorial. We talked about the founding
Sure.
of the library then, during that event. And then at our in-service, I think last year, we had the museums at Station Park come out and to the staff but they presented on the founding of the library and the history that our roots, the library was stationed downtown at first on Main Street. So our roots are there, and then we moved to where kind of Aviva is, and then we moved here. So there's a long history. So
It really was fascinating, I don't know what the other trustees think.
I would
That'd be
invite, I mean,
cool.
I'll make sure, when it's like a lighter agenda, so.
we might have
she'll be
breaking
there.
news, we might have a visit from them in December.
Yeah, but I was thinking about that. Breaking news. So, breaking news. So, maybe.
Spoiler alert.
Maybe, we'll see, maybe December, maybe we'll have her. All right, any other questions or comments with the director's report? The assistant director's report, any questions or comments?
So this would not be a meeting unless we talk about bathrooms. So I think maybe at the next facility planning meeting, maybe that meeting happens, maybe there could be a little more discussion around, I don't want to hype this meeting on that topic. I've done it twice, I think.
You're making a name for yourself.
I am,
Trustee
it's not a
Dodd.
name that you want. I mean, about how to ensure sanitation of the bathrooms more than once a day and relative weighing to costs. And I thought, and I thank you, Beth, for putting that in there and reaching out to the other, like the Park District and 202, because they do have custodial staff that are probably doing that.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, I understand that it's a cost that was not budgeted, and we want to make sure we're understanding, but maybe at the next facility planning meeting, I would request that maybe that can be discussed a little more, in depth to understand the set of costs, what else can we do related to that.
In regards to that, Beth, I had a question. What do they mean by on-site custodial staff? I mean, does each entity have their own cleaning staff? I mean,
Well, I think they're more than custodial. They probably are, keeping an eye on the heating and cooling systems.
well, let me ask you, the gentleman that I see when I come in almost all the time, and this evening, is he
They're facility monitors,
facility
they're
managers? And
monitors.
I'm sorry?
Monitors.
Monitors. So, and what's the difference? Does he actually service some of the things or do any of those tasks?
No, they're more patrolling the parking lot and the inside of the library. They empty the book drop, they take our deliveries, move them to where they're needed in the building. Tonight, they did paint the yellow stripe out here on the front since the curb was repaired. They do emergency cleaning, but all staff do emergency cleaning. Or repairs.
And also, OSHA requirements are specifically for employee requirements? Can you?
Well, it was asked last time if we could check with OSHA for some standards in bathroom cleaning.
Okay.
And they don't have them. OSHA is concerned with making sure that employees have
Not
access to
patrons.
toilet
Okay.
facilities.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I
It's
also
good.
tried to search for it, too. I could not find it.
And it's good to see that the curbs have been done. Nice, I saw them out there painting. Yeah, it's good. And then, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, did anybody have any
No,
other
yeah.
questions? And then I just wanted to tell you one other thing that occurred since I wrote my report. Staff noticed an inconsistency in the people counter numbers versus our programming attendance increase. We have had the current counter counting patrons entering the building since April, and staff have noticed more patrons in the building and our programming counts have increased. But we were not seeing the same statistics in the people count. And our programming attendance is up 7% over last year. So last month and this month, we were seeing inconsistent results. Through 4 recent manual tests with the software, staff found when multiple people or families enter or exit together, only one person is being counted. And we have reset the counting.
Discouraging.
We reset the counting program, but we see the same intermittent results, and we will be having a service call for recalibration. We see that we may be revising patron statistics based on testing, and we're going to look back 6 months.
Yeah, so we were looking at the statistics, as you all look at the statistics, and we were seeing our program numbers like skyrocket. And we were looking at the door count, and we're like, how can this be lower? Seeing that we're seeing kind of throngs of people coming in. So we kind of deep dived into the new system and started looking at it. And then we did, like Beth mentioned, a manual review. We've done 4 of them now. And yes, if 4 people walk in, it counts 1. If you're in a group, if you've got a stroller, or if you've got like, a couple walks in at the same time, it's the setting, and it's a kind of a, is it a laser?
It's a camera.
Camera laser that
Yeah.
counts, but it only counted 1 if 2 walked in. So there's a setting there that was off. We did have some brownouts. We don't know, since 6 months ago, we've had a couple. I don't know if that affected it. But we may need to revise the statistics going back 6 months. So we're gonna look into it.
You're able to go back to,
Well, I'm saying that we would probably do an average
Sure.
back, depending on what the recalibration turns up.
The software gives us some suggestions on how to test and if we were revising our numbers.
any other questions or comments for the assistant director?
I like the new book drop that I Did not have to climb out my window or open the door to like get out, I could reach.
At the
look
Women's
nice.
Club, I hope they appreciate it.
It was very exciting.
I've used it as well.
I think a lot of people seem to like that.
Can I go back before, I think it's page 25 and 34?
And the director's report?
Well, it's actually, I think it's before the director's report. It's
The
having to do with
accounts
accounts payable. So is that like before technically?
Yeah, it's in the
consent
consent agenda,
agenda.
but. if-
Okay, I
that's fine.
messed
Go on.
up
Well,
then.
I mean, if-
Well, all I wanted to know, and you're not gonna like this, Tom, I want us to only put in page 20, no, only put in page 34 and get rid of the report that starts on page 25. Because what it is it's 34 is the summary. It's the same report twice, only if you start on page 25, and maybe I'm misreading
are
it.
you talking about
The
34 and
versus
36?
Accounts versus vendor, is that what we're talking about?
I think she's
I'm
talking-
on 25 and 34, I thought.
25 by vendor,
25 is by vendor.
And then by-
34
And the other's by
summary
account.
I think
account.
you might be talking 30, page 36. 36, the next batch, like
That's really the
36.
start of the next.
Yeah, like 36 through 41, I think it is. Is that what you're talking about? So that's what ties the 34. Because that's the
Okay.
one by account distribution.
Is there, I thought if we did page 34, I thought 34 was a summary.
It is,
Of everything that follows.
from,
It's actually, I think that's what you said, Tom,
Yeah.
the summary of everything above, because you can tell by the heading. You see, that first report is called Accounts Payable for October, and then the next one is Account Distribution Report. See, that's where you can see, differentiate where one ends and the next begins.
Okay, all
So
I'm
it's interesting
saying-
that the vendor summary really ends with totals by account, not by vendor. So
All
it
I'm
just-
saying is, can we eliminate
this.
any
group.
of those reports? Because I really look at,
You just want the summary and then the, if I expect, like the vendor and then the summary.
the only thing that I look at is page 34.
Okay.
So I don't know how the other,
Well, I like to look at the other stuff just because it's more
Sure.
spelled out, like what the things are, because of the descriptions and the, where the money is going to, as opposed to
well,
just
and
saying,
that's important to know.
yeah.
Who needs what level of detail?
Well, I definitely want pages 25, and actually that's what the trustees use to review the bills. So 25 through 33.
Because the bills are grouped by vendor.
Correct,
Yep.
that's by vendor. So I think your question is, so you're saying,
I'm saying I trust the two trustees who are assigned to look at this, and they have it printed for them in the room, and I trust them to do that. And so I'm saying, don't print this. If the consensus is not to print this, I'm trying to get away from printing extra pages.
well, I personally would still want to see this, because I look at this every month, even if I'm not reviewing the bills, the one by expense. Where I think there's a fair question, in my opinion, is if you're looking at the summary pages on page 34 and 35, which tie to pages 36 through, what is that, 41, did I say? Which is the account distribution, because like if you look at the first one, is internet service provider, they're both 450,
Yep.
which is internet service provider, so I don't know, does anybody else look at pages 36 through 41?
Can I offer
Okay.
a different point of view on
Okay,
this?
sure.
Is I don't know if it necessarily, what we may want, I think what we should be providing is the content in here for any Lisle resident that wants to look at.
Sure.
I think that's what, so I agree with Trustee Sullivan, like, yes, we want this streamed down, like streamlined, but I think also if, you know, a resident wants to, looks at it this way versus another way,
That's true.
providing the various options within the agenda book is a easier way for them to consume it. But maybe for us, maybe in the PDF, or something, how it's marked, where we can choose, okay, if we're printing it, I don't want to print this page, I can print this. Because this is the only time we get it printed for us, but everyone else is choosing whether computer or not. I'm all for less paper and a smaller agenda book, but I almost feel like, hey, it's okay if it's sliced different ways. We're transparent and allowing anyone to consume that information.
Yeah, I know this came up a couple years ago, and I think we wound up deciding to keep it. So, does everybody want to keep it as is? I mean, and I guess I would argue an individual trustee, if we decided to scale it back, and if an individual trustee still would want this, because I know it would still be done in-house internally. I mean, if the trustee could get this, and I don't know how easy it is to print and scan.
We do it all at one.
Okay, so, let me ask, is everybody content keeping it the way it is?
I want us to reach a consensus.
Yeah.
I'm not too picky. I think there's enough merit for us to have totals by vendor and totals by account, because different times you're gonna want a different viewpoint there.
Yeah.
But I don't think if we can avoid it, we don't need to have details by vendor and details by account. To have details once, totals by vendor and totals by account, and thereby cut out some pages. That's my, proposal, if that's possible. I mean, I know these are system reports, and so basically what we'd be saying is strip out the details of one and keep, almost like what Liz is saying, keep the totals from 34 on and then the other version, unless somebody loves the by vendor detail and won't let go of it, Tom. And and everybody else was okay by Emily.
I like that one.
So you want to?
I like the by vendor.
All right.
I do, so keep basically.
Yeah, I guess I can live with the by vendor version. I'm an accountant, so
Or
I think
leave
in terms of
everything,
by
or-
account drill down, but I can get over that if the consensus is more easy to reach with details by vendor, totals by vendor, and totals by account.
Emily, keep it as is or make it change or?
Well, I mean, I'm okay with that. Is there a way to double side the paper?
Yes, but we were instructed not to do that. Unless you'd like to
New
change
board,
that.
new era.
Yeah, if we'd like
Well,
to
okay,
change
okay.
it.
I mean,
change
because
that.
if you double side the paper, then you're cutting it
Yeah.
in half.
Okay, so let's ask this question, so throw it.
How can you look at me when you
No, it's fair, it's fair. So.
Did
do
you
we-
not want it
No,
double?
I don't, you know where I want the paper. I think double side would be fine.
Liz and Karen,
Yeah, double-sided.
double-sided Liz?
I was the one who asked it not to be double-sided, and it had to do with, before when it wasn't three-hole punched, we were using these, and I would get lost when it was double-sided and I had it apart. But I think if it's three-hole punched, it actually, for me, would work double-sided.
Because you've got it in order.
Because I've got it in
Yeah.
order, but when I was doing it the other way, I was lost.
Just make sure the printer has the top at the top on both
Wait.
sides, because sometimes they print off of it.
Check Marjorie. Marjorie
Marge?
double
Marjorie?
sided. We're not there yet.
Yeah, Marjorie said she was a tree hugger at that last meeting.
Yeah, I was the
So
one who was,
are we
I thought I was gonna get some emails.
So are we good with leave it as is but double side?
I mean, that's the
Let's
easiest.
I'm good
Okay,
with
let's do that, let's try that next time.
Let's do it this time, and then next
Okay.
time we'll go with Jenny's suggestion.
Okay, well, we'll see how the next
this
month
goes with-
So double side,
Because this was a very thick packet, this.
yeah, so we'll double side.
149 pages, but who's counting?
That's the audit.
Yeah, I know the audit was in there, I know.
So we'll do that, we'll try double siding it next month and we'll take inventory then. I lost my agenda. There it is.
We were assistant director.
Oh, yes, any more questions or comments on the Assistant Director's report, or any questions or comments on any of the department quarterly reports?
I had, this is for youth services. And so two of my three questions are really.
What page are you on?
It's going to be page 66 and 67.
Thank you.
Can we talk, I know the Saturday weekend programming is a newer edition, and it references in here attendance is increasing. Can we just elaborate a little bit more, like on, how has it been increasing? where we kind of stand on what we're seeing, Mr. Will?
Yeah, I'll defer to Will. It has been increasing. We're seeing a lot of positive comments about Saturday programming, and Will.
And when he's done, I can, as a patron, parent, I can also add some stuff about Saturday programming as well.
So specifically, two programs we've been running on Saturdays now are our STEM Saturday programs, which are more science-based, and then our Cookies and Crayons, which are for a younger audience. That is just I should say just, but it's a coloring program. And that one has been very popular. It's kind of made the youth service department a bit of a meeting place for the last few months. We had maybe 10 to 12 kids with their families show up on the first month, and then we had probably close to 30 plus kids at the end of September. So that was really nice. So that one, there's little instruction, but it's more of a like, come to the library and check out our other books. Like we're going to be filtered into our displays and have them use our space. And then the other one is more of we have a librarian instructing the kids. And we've had, I think the first one, we had 7 or 8 kids, and then the second one now, because we're running them once a month, had 10 or 11 kids. So not an enormous bump, but that program isn't designed for more than that many kids. So the bumps kind of correlate. Cookies and Crayons is for a larger audience, and so we can expand that rapidly, whereas opposed to the STEM ones, we only have 15 sign-up slots. So we don't want 20 extra kids showing up.
Because it's instruction-based.
Exactly, yeah, because we have one librarian working with a group of kids, and any more than...
Have we had to turn away people after, like you get 15 filled up and then people want to?
Yes, we've, well, so not for the Saturday ones, for our weekday programs, that has been a common occurrence for a very long time. We actually ended up, originally, when I got here, we just had our Monday STEM and STEAM activities, and the waiting list was so intense that we then started running Tuesday. We've been running Tuesdays for about 3 years now. And we see flux with attendance, but very rarely do we have a regular account less than 12 to 15 kids in those rooms for Mondays and for Tuesdays. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Next question is the next bullet is talked about new outreach opportunities, and there's lots of these entities listed. Are these newer? I just want to make sure, are these the new additions to the outreach that has occurred or are they kind of?
Let me pull it up.
66.
Yeah, page 66, second to last bullet.
He's mentioning the preschools.
Yes.
Like maybe they've been going to and Bright Horizons.
So that's a combination of our old and new. So new ones include Children's Creative Corner. Which ones? One of the Lisle Kinder Cares is new. Chesterbrook is within the last 6 to 7 months, I believe. I spelled connections wrong. That's really why you asked the question.
Yeah.
And then actually, I actually dropped a few of our newer ones off. We've been doing the international school. We've had a librarian go there. So this is just kind of a few that I was able to list off the top of my head. There's probably still 5 or 6 more that we do during a regular month.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And these are all in our service territory, right? Like Chesterbrook?
Yep, everything is within Lisle Library District boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah, the Chesterbrook is just down over by the post office.
Chester, I was thinking the new school in the junior, or the old Sheesher school.
I don't think they've started.
Have we started yet?
No, they
Yes, they
have.
have.
Yeah, there's a Catholic Academy
So
there.
that's a high school.
Oh, yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments for any of the, in regards to the department, quarterly department reports?
Yeah, I had a question for adult services.
Okay, well, if we can't, we'll have to, try to answer, if not, we'll have to email the answer.
Okay, I'm on page 63. Okay. No, I'm sorry, 64. I was just concerned because it looks like there are 30-minute appointments with librarians, and it's for one-on-one help with technology. Can those be booked by people who are reciprocal library card holders who are not? Okay, I guess I kind of have an issue with that because I think if you're going to use our librarian's time for a half an hour, I really think you should be in the Lisle Library District. You know, it's different if you check out a book. I think that that's okay because then you're a reciprocal borrower. But I don't know necessarily that we want to allow anybody, because a reciprocal borrower can be anybody in the state of Illinois. So I'm not sure that I want to allow anybody in the state of Illinois who has a library card in good standing to schedule a half-hour appointment with a Lisle librarian. Because if that program grows, I don't think that that's right.
Do we know if,
Can I respond?
oh, I'm sorry.
So, being reciprocal, I mean, the term itself is that we provide services to all patrons, and our patrons who live in Lisle, in return, can go to another library and receive services.
Not all
Not all services, but just the term itself. So if I walk into Downers, I will be afforded 30 minutes whether I book it or not with a librarian. I can guarantee that almost. And so I just wanted to mention, so the fact that we allow for booking, it just allows for scheduling. But anyone who walks in the door, and it's not unique to spend 20 to 30 minutes with one of our librarians or paraprofessionals. This is a librarian service, but anyone who walks in who may have an issue at one of the PCs or who has needs help finding materials on the floor or needs some reader's advisory service, it's not unique to spend 20 minutes with someone here. And we don't check their papers to see if they're reciprocal or not. We'll just provide the service.
And I guess the word I have a problem with is scheduling. Like, there's certain things I cannot schedule at the Naperville Library. I can go in, and if it's available, I can use it. But I cannot schedule it in advance. And they're under the same Illinois law concerning reciprocal library services, but I can't schedule it. So I would like us to say, sure, if we have somebody available and somebody walks in, go ahead and help them. But I don't think we should be allowing them to schedule.
I think that the principle we use here when we provide service is we don't want to put up barriers to basic service. And if we were overwhelmed, we would look at limiting that, but we are not overwhelmed in this capacity at all. So if we got to that point, then what you're saying, I think, would merit some looking at. But we're not overwhelmed in that area, so if we can provide the service, we will.
So like what Margaret's going to ask, so you're not overwhelmed, and do you know if there's been a lot of non-resident users, or you just don't know that number?
I can look into that. I don't know that. We're not at a point where it's overwhelming staff.
That's fine.
No, my question was about being overwhelmed
Yeah.
or not so much the non-resident.
Okay.
I mean, I'm okay with that, but understand, as a board, we're saying it is not one of our goals then to operate as efficiently as we can. And where this is going to make a difference, if we don't look at efficiency along the way, when we go to make improvements on the physical library, we will not be able to make as many improvements because we're not making ourselves efficient in other areas. As long as you understand that you are making trade-offs when you do that. I mean, I just want you to understand that because I don't think anybody has connected the dots that way.
I don't know how you would measure that.
Oh, I'll show you next time. I I have a chart that I can show you. If you look at the IPLAR data, and you look at the libraries that Tatiana chose to show us the information on, you know, she sent us all the information. You can see where the average library out of the group that she picked out, and it's about the approximate size, and they're all district libraries. If we would have spent what they spent on overall expenses, we would have spent $1.5 million less per year. Had we done that for the last 5 years, we'd have $7.5 million extra to spend on improvements to our physical library. Now, statistics don't lie. I wish I would have brought it with me. I've printed it all out. I was going to wait to hand it out at the CCS meeting. But I'm just saying, when you allow things to be inefficiently run, you are saying you're making trade-offs, because taxpayers are only going to pay so much.
But like you just said, it's not, you're not overwhelmed with it. Is that program even that popular yet?
Well, I mean, people are
Using it,
utilizing
yeah.
it and they're finding value
Sure.
in it, but it is not, it is
It's
one
not.
of the lower totals in
Okay.
terms of transaction, as opposed to, you know, programs and such.
I think, so what I would say is, I mean, kind of going back to what the director said previous, I mean, if if they were overwhelmed, then that would be something to reevaluate, but it doesn't sound like we're even close to that point, so.
Your concern is with the scheduling part of it, because
What I'm
if
saying
someone,
is-
like, I walk upstairs and I say, okay, one of my kids is interested in this, and I talk to one of the youth services librarians, and then they spend a good chunk of time with me looking for stuff that would be appropriate for my kid, like, I didn't schedule that time, but I certainly used that much of their time
Okay,
to do that.
To run through a scenario. Let's say I don't live in Lisle Library District's serving area. And let's say 3 people don't, but they want to schedule this half hour. In order to accommodate them, we may have to, or we may have to make sure that we have the employees who can serve that. Okay, now, they've taken up those scheduled times. Now, a Lisle Library person calls. Okay, so now we've allowed non-Lisle Library residents to schedule those times. And so the Lisle Library people have to come at another time. And then the other thing is, when you have these pockets of small inefficiencies and you extrapolate them out, you end up with larger and larger expenditures. Small inefficiencies mean...
So are you saying it's an inefficiency to be providing these services to non-Lisle Library District residents?
Yes, and what I'm saying is, I bring up these little inefficiencies, and I've been doing it since I've been on the board. And every time we're agreeing, as a board, that that's a small thing. And I hear, and I go along with whatever the board says. This is a small thing, this is a small thing, this is a small thing. But statistically, we are spending way more than the other libraries who have approximately the same number, who are also district libraries, who are also located in the suburbs of Chicago. So what I'm saying is, I want you, as you agree that all these things are small things, to understand that when we see CCS's presentation, and we may want to do something this big, and now we have to do something this big, that as a board, we are making the decisions to allow these inefficiencies to continue, and that's why we have to have fewer capital improvements. And I mean, we need to I mean, that's what's going to happen. So I want the board to understand, you know, that the board can decide that. That's fine. but do it with our eyes wide open. Because you know what, the taxpayers are gonna they're gonna see through, and they're gonna know the numbers. They're gonna know that we're spending an average of 1.5 million more on overall expenditures than the average. That's our size, you know, so we're somewhere being inefficient. I'm not saying I know the answer, but I know we're making decisions to be inefficient. So,
Well, when we probably start getting into design, we'll definitely look at efficiencies. The only thing I was gonna add, and then we'll move on, is with, in the regards of department reports, also with youth services, and I actually heard about this, and it's good to see it too. I like the idea with that we're collaborating with the Park District, with a library or young, one of the young patrons on his Eagle Scout project. And that, and it's gonna, that's like one of those,
Little branches.
little branch in a box type program in the park, so that's good. So that's good. I like the part with the collaborating with the Park District, and
that's well underway, and Will's heading that with one of the Eagle Scouts, so we should see some of those little branches up around, I think, 3 parks.
3 parks.
3 parks, come October, November.
one in Bold End, I believe, and then Green Trails.
Wood Glen, over in Green Trails, and then Surrey Ridge.
Alrighty. Anybody else with anything on the department? Good? Alrighty. Then nothing with unfinished business, and then the only thing we got remaining with new business is 8B, and that's to approve the resolution to determine estimate of funds. Can I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve resolution 19-07, resolution to determine estimate of funds.
Second.
All right, do you want to say anything about this?
This is where we are in line with the truth in taxation law, and we have, in the statute, says that we have to go forward with this resolution 20 days prior to the adoption of our levy ordinance, which happens next month. So we do this now for that reason. And what this is saying is that we are not going forward with TITA, which means we would be levying above 5% of what we did last year, and we are not. So we put in the not to exceed number at 4.99%, and that's what that 4.3 number is. So we're saying we're not levying 5% or more.
Any questions or comments or discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call.
Emily Swistek,
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli,
Aye.
Thomas Duffy,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Jenny Norton,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan,
I,
Thomas Hummel.
Aye, motion passes. All right, last item on the agenda is for opportunity for trustee comments. We'll keep it to 5 minutes. We'll go in reverse order. Emily, trustee Sewers, treasurer, secretary.
Just a few things. I already mentioned I was going to talk about the Saturday stuff in youth services. We did come to the first Cookies and Crayons, which was in August. And then we came again to the one in September, and it was amazing, the increase in the number of patrons that were here for it. They had to keep going back and bringing out more tables and more tables and more tables, and all of youth services was filled with all these tables, and kids were coloring, and it was really neat. And then they were going and checking out materials and all of that, and I think my family maybe stayed for an extra hour after it was over, reading books and all of that. So that was really cool. And then this past Saturday, my youngest came to the STEM Saturday class, which was a really neat program. That was one of the smaller ones. It's in the youth services activity room. And that was a really neat experience for him too. They made a pumpkin slime thing, and he brought it home. And so that was really neat. And I was glad to see that was something on Saturday that I can bring him to, because during the week it's getting too difficult for me to bring him at the 4 o'clock class. So I was happy that there's a Saturday class I could bring him to. So so I was really excited about those programs. And then the other thing is, most of you know I work in the preschool at the Park District, and I walked out into the hallway. I don't know if that was last week or the week before, it's all a blur now, but I saw Xavier, and I remember who else through the window, and I was like, what's going on? And I looked, and we had people from Adult Services at the library working with the seniors, and they were making some letter thing, and it was so cool to see them doing that outreach program at the Park District. So that was really neat to see too. I like when I see library stuff out and about. It's a neat thing to see. I get all excited. That's it.
All right, Trustee Sullivan.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
All right, Treasurer Norton.
I had nothing at the start of the meeting, and now I have 3 things. Don't worry, I don't think you will need the timer. In no particular order, I'll go in chronological order of when the thoughts came to me. First of all, I just want to say how much I welcome and appreciate the public comment that we had today, the people who spoke up, and I want to say in particular that it's dawned on me that it's much easier for us here sitting down behind a table to contribute than I think it is for a person to stand up alone in a microphone, and so it takes a lot of gumption to get up there, and then it's also particularly appreciated that it's constructive and that it's really thoughtful, and I felt the comments that we received were very thoughtful and very constructive, and I wish there would be more of it. So please keep that up, public. Second item, when we were talking about the history of the library, and I sort of tabled my thoughts at the moment because I knew I'd be able to catch it here. I'm going to share something that I thought of before I actually assumed office. I went to the Chicago History Museum and I saw their timeline wall. And I thought, wow, I love this library so much, and this year is their anniversary, and I'm going to learn so much about the history, but so much of it is in people's minds and hearts and not really preserved in a really sort of semi-permanent or permanent way. And I would love for us, once we get through some bigger projects, to consider really honoring the history of the library, and especially during the time that the people who still were there in the beginning are still able to contribute to that project. We'll be able to do that, and we could do something that really honors and something that we can cherish for decades to come, right? Because we're looking decades ahead, so say the public comment. And then thirdly, Liz, I just want to acknowledge your commentary towards the end there. I agree with what you said along the sort of principle from an accounting standpoint where when you're talking about your finances, the trips to Starbucks add up. Every little cup of coffee is small, but you look at that over the course of a longer period of time, you see that suddenly you've made that choice instead of putting money in your 401k or whatever. And I mean, that's common sense, but I think that's what you're trying to get across the table to the rest of us, is that it's a trade-off, and that while it may be immaterial individually, it could be material in aggregate, and we need to keep that in mind. So I heard you. I agree with that in principle.
Right, Trustee Larson.
I really don't have anything at this time, but like Jenny was saying with the history of the library, maybe we could do something like in the gallery downstairs with like if there are photos or archive articles or something, and then do like a special event to celebrate it. I mean, that would be pretty interesting.
Sounds good. Trustee Duffy.
I get 5 minutes, right?
Better set a timer, who's starting it that way.
More of a, this was also in the youth services, but it wasn't, I don't think Will meant to prompt me in this, but was census preparation. And that was brought up in his report, but every public institution has a role to play in ensuring that the census and everyone is counted. And I have not heard much dialogue within the village. I know the county has been talking about it, but I think as a library we need to think about it, because we are one of those nexus points where we see a lot of different individuals, a lot of diversity that we want to make sure that they understand. Census is coming up. This is how you get counted. We want to make sure. And I think one of the comments that struck me tonight was having to turn away people that want to get STEM education because we have 15 slots. I think that that is something as we think about our facility planning, that this is a need, that we have patrons that are taxpayers, or their families are taxpayers, and they're not getting that need met. And I think that that equal to the efficiencies and to everything else, we want to ensure that we get that. And then, I'll echo what Trustee Norton said related to the acknowledgement of efficiencies. I do like my Starbucks coffee each day, it's the only way I get through. But I think it's always good to think about it. I think in this example, we probably disagree with the reciprocal nature of it, but I do think it's good to identify efficiencies and instill them and integrate them within the actual entity. So,
And I'll just, like you said, the county, I know has got a census I don't know how they're, I've seen it, heard about it, but I mean, if that's something you want to.
I can speak to that. So our librarians are training for anticipating people coming in and filling out the census online. So there are do's and don'ts, but the librarians are going through a training process.
do you think maybe as the training's done or something, we could get maybe a tad bit more of a report on that or something like that? Not hiking.
Have we done that like 10 years ago in the past, or is this the first time that the libraries?
I think because this time it's online, they are
this is
directing
the
people
first.
to their local public library to fill out the census. And so that's why Rails is putting forth some training programs for librarians now.
Vice President Bartel.
Yes, first of all, I was impressed with our new auditor. It was much easier for me to understand than the last one. Good job on sourcing and finding this auditor. I love the automatic renewals for somebody who doesn't pay attention to her emails when my book is up. Great feature. And I wanted to ask, I should have done it in the course of the meeting, with the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program, this facility assessment, I thought it was really well done. I'm wondering if we could piggyback on that with some of our facilities committee with their opportunities for our facilities, that we could address that possibly somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
They seem to have some really good ideas.
They do, and I think that they mentioned, and Beth walked through with them and then supplied the report to Beth, but they did mention that some of the larger grants or fixes,
Right.
you would want to wait until you had a plan.
A plan.
And then move forward with that, so.
Yeah,
We're there, we're getting there.
and then possibly CCS can help us coordinate that
Absolutely.
with ComEd.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
And then I skipped myself for last because I had something I was going to say, but I forgot it and I can't remember. I was hoping I would remember.
You can take 5 minutes.
I could,
could wait.
so I'll just have to remember it for next meeting. So with that being said, we get a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned at 8:24.